It's Mick from Mick's Miniatures, and I'm back with the latest video about making buildings from scratch using ordinary everyday stuff. A lot of you have been kind enough to look at my previous efforts. I'm grateful for that. And being as it's YouTube, I thought I'd better do something with a tube. See what I did there? A lot of you were very kind on the social media sites, on Facebook sites that show modelling from card and paper and such like, to comment on a recent building that I made, which included a tower, and a few people asked how I'd made the tower. So that will be the subject of this video: faulty towers. So the first step to making our tower is toilet roll tubes, some scissors, and the handy old yoo-hoo. What I'm going to do is cut the rolls up the middle like that. I've already glued two inside. The first one we leave whole, and glue the split ones over the top. There'll be a bit of a gap there, but as long as you alternate them, you won't notice that when the final surface layers on. And we make these 2 or 3. I'm using 3 on this occasion, and that'll make certain that we've got a realism of thickness for the walls on the bits that show, and where you cut the windows out. So it's just a question of one inside the other. I'm covering that gap up, and we're getting, as you can see at the top, we're getting a good thickness there that'll look realistic if we leave that bit of the wall exposed. This glue clamps pretty quickly, but if you feel as though it's not gripping enough, just use some of those little plastic clamps that I've talked about in previous videos. Okay, the tubes are all set, the glue is hard, and I've marked roughly where I want the door and window to go for this particular creation. It's a Rapunzel style tower, so she wouldn't have to let her hair down too long. And the next stage is to cut those out, which can be a bit tricky with the thickness, and you have to count your fingers when you've finished it, but I'll have a go. Not too bothered about total accuracy with these, because the paper that I put over the top, the texture paper, will hide a multitude of sins. But as I say, just be careful how you handle that, because fingers tend to be underneath. And to spare the sight of blood, I'll just mark those out briefly now. And that's the next step that we need to take. So back again, didn't lose any fingers, and you can see that there's a decent thickness of wall there, which when it's wrapped with texture paper will show in the door and window openings, and that'll give a realistic depth of relief. It looks a bit tatty at the moment, but that'll soon be covered up with the texture paper. So the top of the tower has some battlements or crenellations. That's a lovely word, isn't it? Crenellations. It should be trotted out every now and then. So I've cut the vertical lines, and now I need, just like cutting the windows and doors, I need to make these cuts to pick out the battlements. Just hold the tube steady. It's wobbling a bit because the thickness isn't that great, but you get the idea. Those are going to have to go through, and we'll do a little bit of a blue Peter here and come back when I've finished them all. And there's the finished article. I think some of these defences at the top are looking a little bit thin, even if I get some texture paper wrapped around them. So what I may do is just glue some of the offcuts that I haven't thrown away, like so, to make it all a little bit thicker. When the paper wraps around, it'll give the impression of a nice thick battlement. Okay, so we've got a few extra thicknesses of battlement there. Not too worried about exact precision, because most ancient ruins you've ever seen, including me, are not exactly dead square and have not stood the test of time very well. So I'm happy with that, and I can have a look now at getting a suitable wrap for the whole tower. Personal favourite of mine, and just right for this job, is the Scale Scenes texture paper coursed ashlar, which refers to the fairly straight layers of stone on this texture paper. So I'll cut a section which is just slightly more than the height of the tower, so that when I come to those tricky battlements there'll be bits left to fold over. So with the application of a generous amount of my favourite Yoo-hoo glue, and who doesn't love the smell, it's a straightforward wrap around the tube, leaving that space at the top of the battlements that I spoke about. The door and window space you can see inside there, I'll cut those out and fold those round. The basic techniques are covered in a previous video I did called Wrapping About Wrapping, which around about 600 people have seen. At this point I'd say, if you find the videos useful, or you like this and previous efforts, perhaps you could subscribe to my YouTube channel and give it a few likes and shares. That's the plug for today, folks. A straightforward X cut across the paper, then glued and folded behind, so that you've got those edges that just don't show raw. I like this method of using with texture papers, where you can actually make it look as though you haven't just hacked a hole in your card, and inside you can see where the X shapes are folded over. And the next trick is the battlements. I've just cut down the feathering shapes in between the battlements, and we'll put a bit of glue on those and fold them over. Okay, so all the in-between bits are folded down and glued, and now I'll pull those remaining bits over the tops of the battlements. The sides of the stonework won't show too badly in this gauge as OO, and with a little bit of paint and weathering powder it'll look quite effective. There we have the complete battlement effect. Far from perfect, far from finished, but that's the general idea, and it remains really to go in the spares box and find a suitable door. I'm sure you've all got one of those bits and pieces from old kits lying around. If you haven't got one, start one immediately, and I'll probably draw through the window shape and just cut myself a little frame for that. I've taken a circle of card drawn round the base of the tower, cut it just slightly smaller so that it will fit inside, and in true Blue Peter fashion Here's one I did earlier. What I did, I put it inside from the base and pushed it up till the point where I felt it was right, and I'll secure that with a little bit of glue. The inside and top and roof will require a little bit of painting. I don't use a hell of a lot of paint in my models, but where I do, I find a nice acrylic NATO brown or something like that covers a multitude of sins, along with the good old-fashioned black Sharpie. They're worth a fortune as well. So there we are, a door from the spares box, a thin card window frame cut out with a bit of acrylic behind it, you can just see it shining there, and a dollop of paint for the top. That won't look quite as raw when I get some weathering powder and bits on it, and possibly some ivy growing up the tower. Anyway, I think I'll have to go now. There's your faulty tower, and I do believe I can hear Sybil calling me. Basil!